I think with EVs, it's very similar to almost what we talked about with looking at the Gen Z audience on TikTok. Like, what's the opportunity and where is the gap? I think the same exact thing for EV. The opportunity is there's a lack of education and a lack of awareness and a lack of confidence in EVs. And I think it's typical, of course, for a dealer to want to lean more on the OEM to make that impact with the audience at large. But there is such an opportunity for dealers to fill that gap and start speaking on, some of the instances that might be holding people back from considering an EV. So thinking about like range anxiety, the cost versus the lifetime cost of owning an EV, even just different features. They might even be a little overwhelmed stepping foot into a dealership going for a test drive in an EV because they really don't have any idea how it works. So adding those resources to your website, and again, just videos with your phone. I think sometimes we want to like overthink it or over professionalize something before distributing that content. And really that like true, honest content coming directly from a salesperson about their experience versus like that tier one type of messaging, that's going to hit home a lot faster when someone sees a real person, using an EV or using a particular feature. So I know that there's a lot of dealers with some lingering models on the lot, just because, we had some overconfidence in EV vehicles in 2023. But I would take those exact models and really start leveraging those for your content.
Thank you. I did not know that what I was experiencing recently when I was in the market to buy a car was range anxiety, because I really did want to get an EV, but the concept of me driving up to the Stream HQ for 3 hours and 3 hours back in the same day was not going to happen with an EV without some serious coordination. So I can see how other people would be hesitant.
Yeah, that's a local concern if you think about it. Is the infrastructure in this particular area established enough where there's charging stations?
Yeah.
That's not a big brand EV question. That's really, what does this particular backyard look like to make sure I don't run into this issue.
And there are certain markets that are just way ahead with this, and they're seeing a lot of adoption. And if you go to California, it's hard to not run into an EV. But along the East Coast, those stations just don't exist. I did the research.
Right.
Just don't.
Yeah.
All right. So
I was just going to say, like, you brought up regions, like really understanding the region too. Like if you're in California versus Boston, that is a completely different type of EV messaging that you're going to have. And that, again, you should not rely on the brand to have that conversation, because, again, it's going to be different types of hurdles that you need to get that Boston customer to overcome that the brand or, California's influence probably will never speak to. So just something to consider.
No, that's a great conclusion to that. Aaron, I did want to get you to chime in here before we start wrapping up. But, there are certain markets that not just the manufacturer, but demand and competition is also asking for better adoption, stronger adoption. So what can retailers do to increase that interest and get that adoption for their particular rooftop?
Yeah, so just like Sarah said, the general consumer is looking to the dealership for all things EV. So the dealership is really going to be like the education center of this. We really need to have dealers specifically talk about like the battery range. So this is the biggest hurdle. So we need to make sure that, yes, when we're thinking about like different regions or markets, what's the seasonal or like weather considerations when we're talking about battery capacity? We also need to make sure that the dealerships are educating the consumer on like the at-home charging solutions, and then while charging on the road. And then make sure that our dealers are also thinking about that extra guidance after the purchase of the EV. So what does vehicle maintenance look like? We're thinking about like earning customers for life. So how are we helping them with that full transition after the sale into service and beyond?
Now, had you been running things at any of the dealerships near me and addressed those specific concerns? I may be an EV driver right now, but I am not. Um, so, Sarah and Drew, from the media perspective, is there anything that we need to touch on real quick before we conclude the EV discussion on how dealers can find and market those particular shoppers? Any media insights that you want to share?
I think that an EV shopper is different than a traditional shopper in a lot of ways. We already talked about the length to purchase, but given so much of the uncertainty around range or price or whatever the considerations may be, people are going to do more research and more diligent research before buying an EV. So being there even more from a retargeting standpoint, but also ensuring that you're providing answers to all of those kind of high level questions about range. And I know I already mentioned lifestyle in regards to social, but those lifestyle topics like Aaron just talked about, like how are you making a customer feel comfortable that they can live the life they want to live with an EV? So kind of providing content and advertising messaging that talks to that. And they're going to, do all of that research and engage with that content and really be kind of a research hub for them if you want them to buy an EV from your dealership.